Hi, Stephanie Abrams here, dashing through the airport. I'm going on an adventure. I've got my backpack, I've got my laptop, I've got my traveling shoes on. Come along with me. Yes, let's make tracks, and you never know who you're going to bump into in the Albany Rensselaer train station. There I am, meeting Benjamin Franklin. Can you imagine? And here we are on the Albany Rensselaer, New York train station platform, about to board Amtrak's vintage dome car built in 1954 and in wonderful, beautiful shape. And those wonderful panoramic windows allow you to see all along the route from Albany, New York, all the way up to Montreal. And the folks, the volunteers from Trails and Rails from the National Park Service get on board and tell you about the history of what you're looking at outside the window as you pass such important places as Saratoga and Fort Ticonderoga, and you actually go under the battlefield in a tunnel they built for the train. When you arrive in Montreal, you know you're there. So much is in French. Gorgeous, isn't it? Just gorgeous, beautiful train station. And when you arrive in Montreal, in the train station, you are 2 floors under the Fairmont Queen Elizabeth Hotel, where Yoko Ono and John Lennon did their historic bed-in 1969. Buy yourself those souvenir pajamas. And there's a wonderful suite there. That's the suite that they were in. Such famous visitors as Queen Elizabeth and Princess Grace and Prince Rainier. Gorgeous architecture in Montreal. You'll think you're in France. Right across the street from the Queen Elizabeth, the Fairmont Queen Elizabeth, is the Catholic Church, which, you know, it's like stepping into Europe. And there's an even more amazing basilica in Montreal. So if architecture is your thing, or you need to have a spiritual minute to pull yourself together, this is the place. Gardens, flowers, outdoor cafes, beautiful architecture, and great museums. Isn't that incredible? Hand-blown glass. If you're going to have an autumn tree, I guess that would be the one. Another museum. Look at the architecture on the building. Very reminiscent of what you see in France, actually. And outdoor cafes, sculptures everywhere. Check out this one. Metamorphoses, the name of the exhibit at the time, and there are sculptures outside. Me and Elsie the cow. I hope you know which one I was. Fabulous. We're going to go off next. Look at the hearts and my purse with the lips. Spectacular. Just spectacular. Save you a trip to Paris, by the way. Look at that. Gorgeous. I want that gravy boat. Just beautiful. Okay. This is my favorite thing in the Montreal Museum of Fine Art. You see all these gorgeous colors? Look closely. It's all stuffed animals. You see that? Lions and bears and rabbits and puffins and dogs and dogs. You hear the dogs? Can you hear the dogs? They're here somewhere. Amazing, just absolutely amazing. And they're grouped by color. Look at the dolphin. And some of them are just, you know, jumping out at you. There's a raccoon. I could spend a year there. Oh, what's that strange stuffed animal on the right there? Wow. And now off to the Cavan Museum. Le Musée Cavan. There's one in Paris too, so which was the original. The man's name was Cavan, and he was into creating an experience to understand history. That's Yves Duté and Tiger Woods. Yeah, I'm going to go do a little golfing with Tiger Woods. All wax figures. Queen Elizabeth. Me and Nelson Mandela. Not bad. President Obama, who's too focused to shake hands with me. Charles de Gaulle. And this is a reproduction of what is at the Queen Elizabeth Fairmont Hotel, where Yoko Ono and John Lennon did the peace bed-in. And so that was so inviting. Albert Einstein. Dangerous to get in that shower. That's a scene from Psycho with the master himself, Alfred Hitchcock. A little visit with Steve Jobs, Mahatma Gandhi. This is a Canadian astronaut. And now off to a party. You know, House? George Clooney. What a cutie. Yes, you're at a party. Look at this. How cool is that? It was Robert De Niro. My husband couldn't help but get in the act with Marilyn Monroe there. Elton John and Celine Dion. Do you know who that is? That's Hélène Duquesne, a rock star of the chef world and the king. Ray Charles, Nicolas Cage, Tom Hanks. I had such a good time there. Brangelina. Don't miss the gift shop at the Cavan. It's great fun. Yes. We've run through the Cavan, and I'm hungry. Let's go over to Europea. This restaurant will blow you away. It's a Relais and Chateau restaurant. It does not have rooms to stay in. And the kitchen is out on the main floor, and our table actually was just to the left of there on the main floor. This is the appetizer. Some popcorn in that cone with truffle oil on it. And you see those boxes? Well, they look like books. They use those to serve the food, and they put theatrical smoke into the boxes. So they serve you a course, you open the box, the smoke comes out. Don't eat this one. That's actually your little nappy wipe, hand wipe. The food there is amazing. Amazing, amazing. And served with amazing creativity, and look at that. Everything is theatrical. Okay, there's chicken inside there. Actually, it's a Cornish game hen. And they bake it in this terracotta pot. And when they bring it to the table, you get a hammer and you smack it, and then it's wrapped in parchment paper. They take it back to the kitchen, and then they plate it and bring it out, and there's none of that stuff in it. Look at dessert. Look at the cotton candy tree. Why don't you do that at your next birthday party event? Ludovic de Lanca. He's one of the 3 fellows who own the Europea and a couple of other restaurants as well. Now, just about a block and a half away is Le Cristal Hotel. Hotel Le Cristal. You can call it the Crystal. It's okay. Wonderful place. Wonderful, wonderful, wonderful. It is recognized as one of the very best hotels in Montreal. Great location. Close to everything, including the train station. Are you ready? We're off to Ireland.
I am delighted to be with John Moriarty. And interestingly enough, John seated us at a lovely, cozy table in the corner. And I have to share with him what made that table extra super special. You know, John, when we sat down at the table, I noticed several pictures. You have many pictures, as you can see here, all around, and each one has some special and historic significance. But I was very touched that just over my left shoulder, there is a picture of a gentleman named Dick Fitzgerald. And when you watch episode 2 of Travel TV with Stephanie Abrams, we open the show, even though the show is about captivating Kerry, we open at what I feel like is the gateway and the place where people should recognize if you're in Limerick, you're so close to Dingle. So just keep going south. And in Adair is Fitzgerald's Woodland House Hotel and Spa. And the opening of episode 2 of this radio TV show, I'm so used to saying radio from almost 17 years, but of this TV show, we interviewed David Fitzgerald, Dick's son, in this snug in the pub named Dick's Snug. It's Dick's Corner. And we were just surrounded by pictures of him. And I looked up and said, well, wait a minute, I know that man. Who is that? And I saw who it was. I said, well, this is the perfect spot for me to be sitting. Were you friends?
Very good friends. A wonderful character. And of course, this picture was the last meal he had out before he passed on.
Oh my gosh.
Because he came to Dingle on his final trip and he always stayed next door in Binner's Hotel, and the whole family would come up and have dinner and back in our patio. And when I attended the funeral, this was the picture she had adjacent to the coffin, and she said to me...
She would be Mary Fitzgerald.
His wife, yeah. And she said, do you recognize that picture? And I had a quick look and I said, yes. She said that was the last meal out he had. And she said, I'm going to bring that picture down to you because it was at Lord Baker's Dingle that he had his last final social outing before he passed on. So I'm very happy that she brought it down to me, and I have it in that beautiful corner there. And it's often commented on because he was such a famous and popular man. And everybody liked him, and he had a huge send-off, and we were up at the funeral, and it was just wonderful. What a fabulous guy he was.
Well, you know, have you sat in that little corner in the snug in the bar?
Yes. I was up there 2 weeks ago.
Yeah, I mean, it really is a wonderful tribute to him, and you see it completely because it's the first interview we do in episode 2, Captivating Kerry, where I'm visiting with David, his son.
Yes.
It's lovely.
Oh, yeah, they're a wonderful family.
Oh, they really are.
And his wife is a wonderful operator, and she built up the hotel from a small, humble guest house to what it is today, and it's just a...
Ah, they've gotten their 4th star. They're a 4-star property now.
So it's a wonderful achievement. And, of course, my son, who just served you there earlier on, he did his managerial course in the Woodlands Hotel as well.
Oh, for heaven's sakes. Tell me about Lord Baker. Where did the name come from?
Well, when we purchased the property in 1989, we were in here having a drink with the owner, the late Maud Sheehy, and her husband. So we cut the deal and we were having a drink, and she said, what are you going to call it when you open up this gastro pub and restaurant? And I said to her, I have no idea, that's something we haven't thought about. And she said, why don't you bring back the old historic name, which was Lord Baker? And this was the name in the pub over 130 years ago.
Wow.
And we said, well, that's a very good idea. And she said, not alone that, but he was a famous man. He was a famous poet. He was a fluent Irish speaker. And he was an auctioneer and a politician and a director of the Tralee-Dingle railway line. So we said, well, there's a story, so let's build around it. And that's how we brought back the old name, which is over the, it's actually, you see it here, it's that's over the door there. That's the picture of it from 100 years ago, Main Street, Dingle.
Well.
So we brought back the old name, which I think is a great idea.
Yes, it is, of course.
And as they say in West Kerry, we never look back since, because it's been highly successful. We've almost 30 years been doing a great trade, and it's a family business. My son is working with me, my daughter helps, my wife helps, and she has a Blasket Island heritage. She came from the Great Blasket Island, so we have lots of great memories on the walls of the Blasket Islands and of people who came through the building over a 30-year period. So there's a wonderful collection of pictures from presidents of Ireland to prime ministers. We have 6 prime ministers, 2 presidents. They all came in, they dined here over the years, and they came back again because they liked the old world atmosphere which we try to create in the front, and we have a modern restaurant at the back overlooking the walled garden. So it's come together very well. We have a huge emphasis on local food, because we think there's nothing to beat the West Kerry lamb, being a sheep farmer myself, and there's nothing to beat the fish that's landed locally here every day. So we have a great supply of quality products, and it makes it easy for chefs when they're dealing with the raw material that's so spectacular as what we've got here in West Kerry.
And I'm trying to remember who it was who gave me the education that if I had to take a test on today, I'd probably get a grade of below failing. I only remember 1/3 of the information, maybe 2/3. But what I was informed about was that the people from the Blasket Islands who emigrated to the U.S. settled in Springfield, Massachusetts. So those of you that are watching in Boston and New England and New York upward, northward, who may know folks in the region, if there are Irish descendants there, very good chance they came from the Blasket Islands. And somebody was explaining to me that people from, I don't remember who went where, but the people from Dingle, I think, went to Holyoke, Massachusetts?
That's correct.
Okay, so at least I get 66%. Barely scraping past. There was a 3rd one.
Holyoke and Springfield, and some of them went to Chicopee, which is just outside Springfield. And we now are about to develop a sister city with West Springfield. That's now happening in the near future, the next couple of months.
Well, are you going to come over and visit?
Well, I've been going back and forth for many years, and it's been wonderful because I've been very active in coordinating groups from Dingle who go to sell their goods at the Big E Fair, which is the Eastern States Exposition.
Yeah, and that's a big deal.
That's a big deal, and all the New England states participate. So we take Dingle Jewellery, Dingle Linen, Dingle Crystal, all those companies go out and they sell their goods there, and it's been wonderful. The space is given free of charge to the Dingle companies going out, and the management at the Big E Fair are delighted because it gives them an international dimension when they're holding their fair in September.
Shh, don't tell people that.
September.
Other people will get jealous.
They would. And
well, I'm going to make it my business to come to Big E. We went to the Big E Fair years ago. I don't think we've been back since, so maybe the time to motivate ourselves to be there has come upon us. But we live about an hour and 15 minutes from Springfield.
That's very close by.
So I'm hoping that you will make enough time that we can abscond with you and drag you out to where we live.
That would be fabulous. We'd love that.
And I'd love to have you. It would be grand.
And I must tell you a quick story about Holyoke. This neighbour of mine went to Holyoke in the 1920s, and he didn't have a word of Irish going out there. He came back from Holyoke a fluent Irish speaker, because Holyoke was so small at the time. It was just a great big village, and there was Irish everywhere. And he picked up his Irish and came back to Dingle speaking it fluently.
That's hilarious.
And that is a true story.
That is hilarious. Well, there are places, a very good friend of ours is Derek Warfield.
Yes.
Who started out with his brother Brian and two other fellows as the Wolf Tones.
I know them well.
And then about 17 years ago now, he and Brian had an artistic parting of the ways.
They did indeed.
And such a euphemistic, pleasant way of saying it. But in any event, they split. And Derek started the Young Wolf Tones, which are amazing. And Damaris Woods, who is the banjo player, she is incredible. And then there's these 3 younger fellows, 4 younger fellows. They make a grand sound. They're really marvelous.
Jean Kennedy Smith was a regular visitor to Dingle when she was the American ambassador to Ireland.
Yes, JFK's sister.
Yeah, and she used to call in to us. And she's sister.
Yeah, I see her photo there.
That's right. And she loved my brown bread, and she used to always take a loaf up to Greenmount House to have a nice piece of brown bread for breakfast, she'd say, "Can I take away a loaf?" And I'd say, "You absolutely can." And she was a wonderful lady. We took her around the Sleigh Head Drive, and we took her out to see the dolphin when she was the ambassador. So she was always coming back to Dingle. And then President Kennedy's daughter, Caroline, she was sitting here one day having, which was amazing. She looked like a West Kerry lady. She was sitting here, and some tourists who came in, an American said, "You have somebody very important in this table here." And I said, "Have I?" I said, "I didn't know that." And said, "You know, she's President Kennedy's daughter, former." And I said, "That's amazing." But she never told me who she was. But she kept a low profile, but obviously her aunt had told her to call in.
Oh, for heaven's sakes.
And she went out and she started taking photos of this place. And that was it. She looked like a very plain, ordinary West Kerry girl.
Lord Baker's in Dingle, just next to Dingle Benner's wonderful hotel, just next door. Thank you so much for joining us today. This was great. I really appreciated meeting you. Thank you for making the time. A fireside chat. What could be lovelier? This is Stephanie Abrams. Oh, we're taking a little break. Pay attention and come on back. It is such a delight not only to be at the Cavan County Museum, but to be here with Savina Donohoe, who is the curator here at the museum. So great to be here with you again.
Well, Stephanie, it's really, really lovely to have you back with us. I can't believe it's 4 years since you were here. I know I've spoken to you on the radio a few times, but as they say in Cavan, you're more than welcome. So you really are.
Well, thank you so much. When did this building open as a museum?
Well, it opened in 1996. So we're 22 years old. Fairly new in museum terms, really. As you know, it was an old convent. It was owned by the St. Clair sisters. And at the time, there were only 2 sisters living here in the museum. So they put the museum up for sale, oh, well, in the convent, I should say. So they put the convent up for sale. Cavan County Council bought it and turned it into the county museum, which was a great use of an old building.
Move.
Yeah, very smart.
Yeah. I was very surprised when I was here the first time to find out that Sir Thomas Lipton of Lipton Tea was a Cavan man.
Well, I think he might have not just been a Cavan man, but he was very near, and he was maybe a Fermanagh man who bought a very famous cup back in 1914. It was the first cup that was ever bought for soccer, actually.
So it was the Lipton cup.
It was the Lipton cup.
Which is about so big, and
yes.
So, it looks like a big coffee urn in a restaurant.
Yes, it does indeed, and we still have it. Yes, yeah, and it's a great, because there's a whole history behind it, because it was only ever played for once, and then when World War I broke out, it kind of went missing, or well, it went into storage, but it only resurrected itself back with us in recent years.
Where was it found?
A family in Dublin had it, and they kindly give it back.
Well, that was very nice.
Well, I can't say we owned it. We didn't own it in the first place, but as I like to think,
At least it came back to Cavan.
We're minding it now at the minute, so that's important.
I think, but isn't that the job of a museum?
That's the job of a museum. I think the job of a museum is to mind the past for the future, and not to forget the past, or the people who lived in the past, the way they lived, and you can see that in this gallery here we're sitting in now. There's so many, you know, reminders of how life used to be. And
well, let's talk about that. When people come to visit the Cavan County Museum, on the interior, what things will they find here?
Well, they will find a lot. They will find a lot of different exhibitions covering all types. For example, there's one on the Gaelic Athletic Association, which is GAA as we call it here in Ireland, which is football. There's camogie, which was the girls' form of hurling, and another old sport.
What's the name of that sport?
Camogie. Camogie. It's, you play it with a hurling. You know, like it's in the men play hurling, we play camogie.
Got it.
So there's a camogie gallery down there. It is on the lower floor. On this floor we have the gallery we're in now. We call it the Folklife Gallery. Then you move into the costume room, which is beautiful. Then you'll move into the
costume room is, you know, costumes from the point of view of this is actual clothing people would have worn.
Absolutely.
There's a couple of dresses in there I lust after.
Aren't they good? And do you notice how small the waists are, and how small the feet? No, we don't. No, we won't talk about that. But can I just tell your people that that gallery is very special to us, because the lady who donated all the materials and a lot of what's in here was a lady called Phyllis Farris. And she was really a lady who was way ahead of her time. She was from Dublin, and actually her nephew was married to our First Lady President, Mary Robinson.
Oh, for heaven's sake.
Yeah.
I know Mary.
Yeah, well, her nephew Nick, and Mrs. Farris was Robinson before she got married. But they came, well actually they opened, but I'll go back to the story. So Mrs. Farris was a woman way ahead of her time. And she was an avid collector of material, all kinds of old material. And she had so much stuff in her house at one stage. She had to do something. She couldn't keep it anymore in her house. So she had a pig house, and she cleared out the pig house and she put her whole collection into the pig house.
Of fabric.
Of fabric, of all you see here, all the tools, all the old, you know, everything you see here. And it became known around Cavan and in Ireland as the pig house collection. And then when Cavan...
That doesn't sound very complimentary.
I know. I thought it was good, but then when Cavan County Council were coming up, you know, with the idea of having a county museum, Mrs. Farris said, well, if you do, I'll donate my entire collection. So she's very important, because I often think only for her and her kindness and her generosity, we wouldn't have the museum we have here today.
I know there are people I need to connect you with.
Please do.
Yeah. The more time I spend with you, Savina, the more connections of people I think you should know. There's a museum in Milwaukee, Wisconsin. Okay. And this museum, the Museum of Fine Art there, is based on the personal collection of a woman who had furnishings and art, you know, everything from sofas and dining room tables and whatnot, to amazing artwork. And she knew that the end of her life was coming, and so she said to some folks in Milwaukee, I will give you all of this and $1 million if you'll go and you'll build a museum and build on it. So I think of that.
It's a similar story.
Yeah, there's another parallel story that I'll share with you about the Sterling and Francine Clark Art Institute in Western Massachusetts, Berkshire County, where we live. Okay. That's based on the personal collection. And Sterling Clark was an heir to the Singer sewing machine fortune, who went out in the early 1920s when the Impressionists were coming up, and decided, you know, let's buy everything we like. Which today is a fabulous museum with world-class art in the Dingle of Massachusetts. Stay with me, we'll be right back.
Please don't go away, there's so much more to come.
Well, Savina Donohoe, the curator of the Cavan Museum here in County Cavan, Ireland. We've taken a little walk down the hallway into my personal favorite room. The clothing in this showcase is amazing.
It is, isn't it?
Yes, and to think that it's all handmade work.
It is, and so many of our visitors love this gallery. Absolutely, and they're intrigued by the dresses, the shoes, the uniforms. It's a fantastic collection.
That's gorgeous.
And all of this is from Mrs. Farris, as I told you. It was all in the pig house. And it came, I know, and it came here. And I think it's lovely, actually. Mrs. Farris did an awful lot for women in this county. She was way ahead of her time. She was very involved in rural electrification coming, you know, the light coming into houses, all of that. She did a lot to get women out of the homes and out working in places. So she was really, really ahead of her time. So I think she was a great woman, and I'm really happy to talk about her.
That's wonderful. Let's take a walk down the hall, see what else there is.
Well, we're taking a quick tour outside of the Cavan County Museum. When you're standing outside looking at the museum, these World War I trenches are just to the left of it. So you walk about maybe 20 feet and it's right there. They have a nice little playground on the other side of it too, so if you're traveling with children, it's a nice place for them to take a little break. You can see, when you walk through, it's just the most remarkable experience because they actually have sound effects as you're walking. And you'll hear guns and cannon and men giving orders and people getting hurt. And they've got a plank floor down, so you're not walking through mud. And those sandbags are actually concrete inside, covered with burlap. But as you look around, you really get the sensation of what it was like for those who served in World War I, and these trenches were in France. About 10,000 people just from County Cavan served in World War I, and 2014 was the 100th anniversary of the beginning of the war. And so in 2014, these trenches were ready to rock and roll for people to come and visit and have an understanding. And in addition to the soldiers who are in the front lines, there's a piece of the infirmary there. No, actually, that's just somebody sleeping. But in addition to the front line people that were there fighting, the men, the soldiers that were there, you had a lot of women who were there, who were serving with the medical corps, nurses. I don't know if any of them were doctors. They may well have been. But this is where the infirmary is. It was just an incredible experience walking through there. Or check out the food, because you do go past what this little cave of a place that was the mess hall. How about that Campbell's soup? Managed to make its way into France. Photos, figurines, memorabilia of various kinds. A really remarkable experience. It's not huge, but it's quite a labyrinth. It's the most unusual maze I've ever walked through or around. The town is Ballyjamesduff. One word, Ballyjamesduff.
You know, it's very clear, Savina, that World War I and Cavan were intricately connected, and usually when we think about wars and battles, we think mostly about men, but clearly the women of Cavan also played a key role in World War I as it relates to leaving their home and hearth and going off to France to fight in World War I.
It's actually very true what you say, Stephanie. Well, World War I, we know there was 10,000 people from Cavan at least took part in World War I. And we know out of that, at least 700 were killed. They're big numbers, you know, big loss for Cavan. Yes, there were women involved in the war as well as nurses, drivers, and of course a lot of women here at home were very involved by making, and they had to work because the men were gone. So life, in many ways, it was World War I that started women working. Sadly, that's, you know, that's one of the ways some people look at it.
What do we find in this room?
Well, in this room, everything you see in this room is all authentic World War I memorabilia.
How about that hand grenade?
Yes, well, it's not, no, you're okay. No, you're fine. Yes, and the bullets, yes, and yes, no, you're okay with that. Out in the trenches, we have a lot, but they're not genuine artifacts. In here is all genuine artifacts from that period of time.
Well, let's move along because there's so much more to see here.
Yeah. In this case here, we have all the memorabilia belonging to General Sir Oliver Nugent. And the Nugent family were actually from Cavan and in a place called Mount Nugent. So General Sir Oliver Nugent came from there. He went to war, and he was actually the commander of the 36th Ulster Division. He was also very friendly with Lord Farnham. They were both very good friends. And during the Battle of the Somme, he and Lord Farnham were together. And he wrote a lovely letter home to his wife the day on the 2nd of July, 1916, telling his wife that both himself and Arthur, as he called Lord Farnham, were both doing very well.
We're on the top floor of the museum, and actually the best way to see the Cavan County Museum is to go to the top floor and work your way down. And you can walk down the steps, or there is an elevator for your convenience as well. This is an interesting room. We seem to have everything, including chamber pot here. Whose room is this, Savina?
Well, this room, Stephen, is what we call the Nuns' Gallery. And because, as I told you earlier, the museum used to be a convent, we thought it was nice to recreate one of the rooms. And actually, this is where the nuns slept up here. And there were about 26 bedrooms up here. And this is the exact size, what you see now, as a bedroom would have been for the nuns.
So was this a convent only, or was it a school?
It was a school as well. Yes, it was a school, a very big school. And what's interesting, when the nuns, you know, this was built, they built it for themselves. There was a fireplace in every room, because of course there was no electricity then. So every nun had her own open fire in her bedroom. So I'm sure there was a lot of work with that, but that's just some. So we just thought it was nice to keep the building and, you know, and just have this gallery, especially for people, and there would have been a lot of people who went to school here, and just for them when they come back to visit, that just a little bit of memory of what the building was.
Very nice. This is such an interesting exhibit room here at Cavan County Museum. Savina, explain who Percy French was, to whom this room is dedicated.
Well, we've dedicated this room to Percy French. Percy French was many things. That's the best way to describe him. He started off in life as an engineer. It took him a long while to qualify as an engineer, because his first love was really music, drama and art. He was the most brilliant artist, the most brilliant musician.
So it was family pressure that put him into engineering studies?
I think so, because to say it took him a long, long while to qualify. But to tell you, he came to Cavan. He was born in Roscommon, and he came to Cavan to work as an engineer. When he was in Cavan, his job in Cavan, he was known as an inspector of drains. So he used to go around the county inspecting the drains. And whenever he'd come to Ballyjamesduff, he'd meet a man called Paddy Riley. Paddy Riley was a jarvey, or what you would know as a taxi man. And Paddy Riley would bring Percy French around in his pony and trap. And one time Percy French came back to Ballyjamesduff, Paddy Riley was gone. He had emigrated to Scotland. And like everything in Percy French's life, if anything happened, he wrote a song, he drew a painting, or he wrote a play. So in this instance, when Paddy Riley had gone, he wrote the song, which is very famous to us here in Ireland, Come Back Paddy Riley to Ballyjamesduff. And he really put Ballyjamesduff on the map.
Well, you may get the impression that you're outside, but this is such a well-done exhibit here at the Cavan County Museum that you have to look carefully to realize you're not outside. You're on the 3rd floor of this museum. Savina, maybe you can explain what we're looking at and what it's representing.
Well, Stephanie, we're looking at now what we know as Co.Cavan Castle. And Co.Cavan Castle is on the Erin River way, and it was built in 1220. It's what's known as it's a Norman castle. Now this is a replica, of course, but it's actually standing like that today out in Lough Oughter, and we call it Co.Cavan Castle. We did an exhibition back some years ago because an archaeologist we worked with he carried out a dig, and all the artefacts you see in the room are from the castle, from the whole area of the castle. Now it was built on a crannog, and that's an island built in the middle of a lake. And there was a lot of fighting going on there, and that's why you see the cannon and different things there. And they say there's many stories, many stories around Co.Cavan. Some of them are true, and many of them are not true.
I love this bike. If I could just wheel it out of here and figure out how to tuck it into my rollerboard, it would go home with me. What a souvenir. This is the coveted Lipton Cup. And it is an athletic award associated with Sir Thomas Lipton, of Lipton tea, actually, fame. Savina, give us a little insight into why the cup is here and what it's all about. And we talked about it a bit earlier.
Yes, we did speak a bit earlier.
Now we're with it.
Now we're with it. It's fantastic, isn't it? Well, the story behind it is it was originated in 1913. It was made in 1913 for soccer, a soccer match. And actually the soccer match was to be played in Clones in County Monaghan. It was only ever played for once. And at that match, it was the Inniskillen, a team from Inniskillen, who won it. But then, after 1913, World War I broke out, the Easter Rising, things were very turbulent, and it kind of went missing for a while. But it was a man, a solicitor in Dublin, Mr. Black, he had it for safekeeping, and it was his son, Richard, who donated it back. And we have it here. We're minding it for, actually for Clones Soccer Club at the minute, here in the museum. We will give it back, of course, if we're asked, but we love it, and it's hard to give things back when you like them a lot, isn't it?
Well, you know, go Richard.
Absolutely.
You're my kind of guy, Richard.
You know, but it's really good.
Being able to share it with the public is really something very special, and it is quite a trophy. I wonder how many people it takes to hold the thing up.
Actually, you see the black on the bottom, it separates from the cup. That's just kind of the base. So it's actually heavier than the cup itself.
Oh, really?
But I can tell you, that cup is actually very valuable.
I would think.
Yes, I know, because it's quite a very valuable cup.
Is it, aside from the, you know...
yes, of course, yes, value, absolutely.
Is it sterling silver?
Sterling silver, yes. So it's quite, and of course, like everything else, it tells a bit stories about the past, and that's what we're all about in the museum, is kind of caring for the past, so as we can tell people, you know, going forward into the future.
That's quite amazing. What a work of art.
Where did the hour go? Come back next week. Gotta fly now. Hi, I'm Stephanie Abrams, here in this bookshop to do a wonderful book signing. And why? Because everybody's interested in Rumors, my novel of suspense, intrigue, love, lust, and conspiracies and lies, and an ending you'll never see coming. Give it a shot. You'll find it at every online bookseller. Look for Rumors by Stephanie Abrams and enjoy.